Morning, everybody. It's Pete Blair, aka the Mad Scientist. I have a little sander grinder that I use here to put edges on knife blades and carving knives, etc. On it is a belt that I bought from Lee Valley for about $10. And I'd like to show you how I go about making my own from other materials that I have or other belts that I have around that I have no use for. Here's this guy running. Nice and quiet, but for $10 or $9 plus tax, I'm a little cheap. So I like to find a different way of doing that, which I'm going to show you shortly. Thanks for tuning in. With I think it's a 42-inch belt it uses, 1 inch wide. And I'm kind of frugal, so I'm always looking for ways to save a few dollars. And I also buy a lot of items at garage sales and at auctions, and frequently I get sandpaper, sanding belts, all sorts of bits and pieces of tools and whatever. So I would like to show you what I do and how I make sanding belts for my, it's a 1 inch by 42 little sander grinder. Here's an example of the kind of thing that I get at auction. So I got a bunch of these sanding belts. They're obviously longer than what I need. And wider than what I need. They generally have a seam in them, and I think it's about a 67-degree cut in there. These ones are put together, they're glued together, they're cut, put together, and then I think they kind of sand off a little bit to reduce this lump. But what I'm going to do is I'm just going to butt joint them. So first what I'll do is I'll cut on that same angle. Just use a pair of tin snips that I got at auction again, or you could use a pair of scissors or whatever. Then I know I want it the length of 42 inches. I got that marked out on my bench. So I'll just lay that out here. Oops, I have to grab a pencil. So that's where the 42 inches is. All I want to do now is cut that. Make that cut the same angle, which I think, as I said, I think it's 67 degrees. There's a couple different angles that are used. Then I just use the one guide, the one already cut angle to cut the other one. Now I have some other sandpaper I can use wherever. And I have a length of 42 inches of the sandpaper, but it's 1.5 inches wide, I believe. It's wider than what I need. Now I could probably, it's 1 3/4 actually. I could probably get away with it, but I'm not going to. So what I'd like to do now is I want to reduce it to, we'll just reduce it to 1 inch. So mark it where I think the inch is. Whoop. And if it was a little bigger, a little smaller, it really wouldn't matter. So typically what I can do, hope this works on this one, I haven't tested this, just do a little cut and then I just tear it. And again, I wind up with another piece of sandpaper that I can use for whatever, and my 1 inch width that's the right length. I just happen to have, again, I think I got it at an auction, just a large piece of channel. It works really good for doing this. So what I'll do, is I'll put just a piece of wax paper down here on the edge, and I clamp the new belt parallel to this front edge so that it runs right likely along, or as straight as I can along there. Take the other end around, and as you can see, it didn't quite tear square, but that doesn't matter. So what I want is a pretty good joint there. And I'm going to keep one edge, the factory edge, straight. So I don't care if this one's off a little bit. So it's a little bit wider here than here. It didn't quite tear straight. So what I found is best to do here is if I either sand this off a little bit here where I'm going to join it, or roughen it up just take a small piece of sandpaper. Now this is the back side I'm sanding here. I'm just wanting to get a good place for this tape to adhere. So once again, at auction I got this strange tape, and it is almost impossible to tear. It's called SILONICET, Silon, S-I-L-O-N tape. Silonic makes it. And I think this happens to come from Japan, but I don't know where. It doesn't really matter. If you can find a tape that's got fibers in it running this way, lots of fibers, and it's hard to tear, that would probably work for you. So what I'd like to do is to put a little super glue on this, little CA glue on this, before I do the tape. So I'll just spread a little super glue on here, especially on right next to the joint. But I'm going to put a piece of tape on it, so I'll spread it out a little bit further. This is just thin CA. Now take a piece of that tape that I showed you, and I'll just put it on there. Now I'll try and put it on so it's flush on this edge over here closest to me, the straight edge. I'm going to have to trim it off. Then I take a block. I just happen to have a piece of nylon here. And I clamp that down. And I think this is kind of a critical step. Kind of lines everything up nice. And then I leave that for a bit. So that's pretty much it. I'll show you the rest in a minute. Okay, I'm back. It's about 5 minutes later. Just having a sip of coffee. We'll undo this. And looking at the belt, I didn't quite get it straight on the edge, but it's pretty close. We'll trim off this little extra piece of tape that I put on here. And that's kind of what it looks like. Now, it has got, obviously, because it's got this tape on it, it's going to be a little thicker right there. I think I should just trim this a little better here, too. No, I can't get it right. So what I would do now is take it to my belt sander. I'm going to do that out of frame. And just give this a little sanding here to try and thin this down to similar thickness to that paper. So here I'm at the belt sander. It's going to be a little bit noisy. I don't know what I got on here. Maybe it's a 220 or something like that. It's my general use belt. Sorry about the noise. I'm just going to sand this side here. Just to try and thin that down a little bit. So here's my little sander grinder. It's set up, this is about a 10-degree angle. That's one of the angles I use to put an edge on a knife. And I use most of these belts for that purpose. So this is the belt I just made. It goes on, and I don't really think it matters which side leads. If you do have one that's kind of sticking up more than the other, like I do have here, maybe I just trim a bit of that off. Then you don't want that to lead, so you put that up so it trails. This you just load simply by pushing down on the top wheel, loading it on the bottom one. I usually spin it just to see if it stays really straight, and there you go. That's how I make a sanding belt for grinding metal or whatever. Pretty cheap, and yeah, so that's it. That's a quick, easy way of making a sanding belt. Maybe just a piece of steel that it's part of a blade I just recently made. I'll just do a little grinding with it. Don't forget your safety glasses anytime you're doing something like this. So as you can see, it works pretty good. Very cheap. So that's it.